All right, so let's start by looking at the morality of the acts. Now, these first three lines are almost self-evident and obvious, but that's okay, because we always have to look at the ordinary things. Oftentimes, we find things to be extraordinary within us. Bless you. So human acts, they are moral because they determine the goodness or the evil of the person who performs them. All right? Human acts are moral because they determine the goodness or the evil of the acts who performed them. All right? They determine the moral, the evil, or the goodness of the acts of whoever performs them. So, in essence, we are what we do. All right? Our character is a summation of how we have acted in our lives. This is why we say actions speak louder than words. You know, how is it that you live your life? That determines the moral goodness within us. Okay, how we live our lives. Just this is redundant, but I'm trying to be redundant so that I can pronounce the issue a little bit harder. Moral acts spiritually define the person. Okay? Moral acts spiritually define the person. And there's nothing to add to this third line. So moral acts spiritually define the person. We will who we are by our decisions and our actions. People may think that you are a very honest person. Because why? They don't know you to have told mistruths or to exaggerate. So they find you to be a very honest person. Somebody might find you to be very reliable. Why? Because you say what you're going to do. If you're going to pick them up at 4, you pick them up at 4. If you're going to hang out with them on Sunday, you hang out with them on Sunday. So over the course of your relationship, you have proven yourself very reliable. That is determined by your actions that you've done. Yes?
What if you're a conniving, sneaking type?
Well, they have that too, right? So let's say you are conniving and sneaking, right? So maybe you know somebody who's a pathological liar. There are some people who lie about what they ate for breakfast. It has no meaning, but somehow they're always exaggerating. If you say you had omelets and toast, well, they had omelets, toast, and hash browns. I mean, there's just something there, right? Now, if that person doesn't like the fact that they are known as pathological liars or exaggerators, that's, in a sense, what you get. Because you're a summation. Your moral acts spiritually define who you are as a person. Now, if they want to change, great. If somebody's, like, sometimes young people are caught up in exaggeration because you want to fit in, right? And but then as you get older, you realize, why do I always have to say more than I do? And you don't like it. So you determine to change. That's great. You can, maneuver those habits so that you can then become known as a person who, pretty much is spot on. If they tell you they ran 2 miles, they probably ran a mile in, 2 miles. Maybe they ran 2.5. They don't want to exaggerate. So, I mean, we become what we are by what we do. Okay? So that's just true in all of morality. Now, I'll bring these next 2 things up. And then I'll talk about these 3 things. First off, the morality of acts is defined by the relationship of man's freedom towards an authentic good. All right? The morality of acts is defined by the relationship of man's freedom to an authentic good. We're always choosing goods. What is it that you want? I want, in other words, on Tuesday, Mr. Ditsky will take you to Alvernia so that, you can look through colleges. You're directing. So if you go there and you are trying to be respectful, look them in the eye, shake their hands, and I'm joking about it, but, you're trying to let them know that, you're a serious person with a good demeanor, you're very polite and respectful, okay? So you've chosen those goods. So the morality of your act is defined in a relationship of your freedom towards an authentic good. If we ever wonder what the big question is, how do I get to heaven, right? Didn't we have a scripture verse where somebody went and simply asked Jesus that very question? What must I do to have eternal life? That's what he said. What must I do to have eternal life? What we don't like is the answer. Follow the commandments and give everything you have. Isn't that something? Are we surprised that Christ wants all of us? You know? I mean, when you get engaged to get married, I'm expecting you to want all of that person. You know, in other words, I want every last part of you here with me. If the person says, I'm going to reserve parts of myself, I don't intend to give myself to you emotionally and in love, that's a problem, right? They want you all in. Why are we so surprised that God wants the same thing? I want you all, you know? Why don't we do it? Because we're afraid. You know, we're afraid he's going to ask us to do something that we didn't want to do, right? So I've already talked to you about man's design and man's final end, right? We determine our design. And from our design, we can determine teleologically, right, what is the end. So remember I said if I brought a bicycle in here and had you never seen one before in your life, and I can't let you guys go for 40 minutes, and I came back, I bet you somebody would be riding it around the room. You would have figured out that's a seat to sit on, and you could pedal it. You would have figured out by looking at the design. So we do that with our own selves. You know, when we realize, if you want it in a nutshell, you know, why is it that we can't we can't always satisfy our desires here on earth? Because we're not made for here on earth. We're supernaturally oriented. So we're going to have our moral acts in line with our design to bring us to the final end, which is God. Okay? So I'm just kind of like summing up some of the points here. Now the last thing before we look at the three fonts is, and when we say ordering, I'm not saying giving orders. Think of it as putting it in order, okay? You know, putting things in order, like you're lining up all your ingredients, okay? Make sure you have your baking powder, your flour, your sugar, and all that stuff. So the ordering of man's acts must be rational. You have to think about it. It must be free, conscious, right? And deliberate. You have to deliberately choose it. Now, in moral theology, we don't use the words, I don't want to say guilty as much. We use the word culpable. So if I stole something, right, from my wife or one of my children, for me it's totally rational, free, conscious, and deliberate. I have no mental deficiencies. So I wouldn't say I'm totally guilty. I'd say I'm fully culpable. But let's say that either a 3-year-old child or somebody with mental deficiencies did it. I mean, we would say they're not entirely responsible. We would say they are not as culpable. So if, you know, like when Mr. Laser was the principal here, his one son had Down syndrome, and he would tell stories. You know, they're the most wonderful, friendly people in the world, but they could be little devils like anybody else, right? So if he would do something that was, you know, conniving, like one time they went in the neighbor's car and locked the door, pretending they were driving, and this was a really nice car. Okay, we still call that bad. It's disrespect for a person's property, but nobody's going to hold them to the same culpability as they would you, right? Because you are totally rational, free, conscious, and deliberate, all right? Still wrong. We don't call it good. Still wrong, but it has to be, you know, these 4 things. All right, any questions on that? All right. One thing before I start with the fonts. And again, this is just a reiteration. The moral fonts ensure that human acts are ordered towards God. We want to make sure that as people of the faith, all our acts are ordered towards God. We cannot assume that God does not exist when we live in a Christian system, okay? Atheism is not the neutrality, right? So we're ordering all our acts towards God. We assume that. The first of them, there's 3 of them. The first one is called the object. I'll explain it, then I'll give you some examples. The object. This is, what are you doing? That's the question we're asking. What are you doing? Okay? This is the goal of the person. It considers the total aspects of the act. Okay? And I'll explain what that means. This is the goal of the person, and it's considering the total aspect of the act. And once you get that down, then pay attention to me, I'll explain what it means. Considering the total aspect of the act. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 scenarios for every one of the fonts, so you can see how I break it down. And all that I'm going to ask you, I forgot to say this the first period, is we have to work off what's known as simple scenarios. So you might be curious and want to raise your hand and say, well, what if this happens? But what if that happens? But what if it's this person? Okay, the reason why we don't do that is because it can go on in infinity. And every time you add something, it changes everything, okay? So I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. The first one is, I have this little, ruler in my hand. I throw it down on Ryan's desk. What did I do? It has to be the total aspect of the act. I didn't just throw the ruler down. The object is, I wanted Ryan's attention, okay? I wanted Ryan's attention. Because that's the total aspect of the act. If I had an envelope over there on the corner of my desk, and Anthony went to the bathroom, picked it up, and walked out with it, we would not yet know what he did. We couldn't say, what did he do? He walked out of the room with the envelope. Okay, that's only the physical elements. You don't know that I had said something to Anthony beforehand, and I said, hey, he says, can I go to the bathroom? Yeah, when you do, can you take that down to the office for me? So what is he doing? Doing me a favor. That's the object of that act. He's doing me a favor, okay? If somebody comes and says, Mr. Bueno, can you help with the goodness of this act, or if it's evil? 2 people are engaged in a sexual act. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. We don't have enough information. Are they married? Yes. Are they married to each other? No. Then it's adultery. Do you see? I need other information before I can determine what is the object of that act. The act is adultery. Okay? So do you get that? You'll get this as we move through other stuff too. All I wanted you to make sure you knew is that you couldn't just say the object of the act is sexual relations, Anthony walking out of the room, Mr. Bueno throwing a ruler down. It has to hold more than that. The second one is the intention. This is the why. This is the why. So, with the intention, this is why the person intends to perform the object. Why are you doing the what? Okay? This is why the person intends to perform the object. So, again, if I throw the ruler down and I want to get Ryan's attention, if that's what I'm doing, it could be, I think we could make something up. Maybe, Ryan was nodding off because my lecture wasn't on its riveting high point, and I just wanted to alert her, look up. Could be that simple, right? That could be my intention. Or I'm just trying to be funny. It wasn't funny, right? I just would try to be funny and I threw it down. So my object was to get Ryan's attention. My intention was to be funny, whether it was or not. Anthony takes the envelope and brings it down for me. So let's say that's what happened, right? I asked him to do it, so he's doing me a favor. What could be a couple different intentions Anthony would have for doing me a favor? What do you think? Maybe he just wanted to get out of class, right? What would be the other one?
Trying to get on your good side.
Trying to get on my good side. Come on, somebody be a nice guy to him. What else could he be doing it? Why else?
Out of the kindness of his heart.
He's a nice guy. All right? I don't know why they didn't come up with that first, Anthony. Okay, so do you see, though, that's the intention. I mean, there's varying intentions, right? So it could be that he wanted to get on my good side. It could be I just want to get out of class. Or it could be just a nice guy, all right? Let's say that there are 2 people engaged in a sexual act and they're not married to each other. But the one person really loves this one. I mean, they love them. So when they're in the sexual act, they are trying to express their love and their care and their concern. Is that a good intention? Sure it is. Okay? That's a good intention. So all we're trying to say is it's not the same as motive, okay? The person intends to perform. Why? We're asking why. I'll explain all these as we move. The last one is circumstances. These are the who, the when, and the where. These are all the other factors surrounding the act. Okay? These are all the other factors surrounding the act. And they are important. All right? These are all the other factors surrounding the act. The who, the when, and the where. I'll wait to get that written down, and then I'll go through my three scenarios again so you can get the circumstances and why they're important. Okay? So, not to continue to annoy Ryan, but I put the roller down on Ryan's desk because I want to get her attention. And I'm doing it to be funny. The circumstance is that I know Ryan. She's a student of mine. So circumstances are all the things. She's at Berks Catholic. She's here in class. Now, why is that important? Because if I didn't know her, and I went over and went, you know, she'd look at me like I'm an idiot. The circumstances that I don't know this person and it's a stranger changes everything, doesn't it? All right? The fact that, you know, Anthony is a student here and somebody that I would trust to bring an envelope down. You're welcome, man. Thank you. That would be a lot. That would not be the same circumstance as if, you know, I don't know this person. This is a different. We're in a classroom where, you know, we have built a relationship. Let's say that I was giving a seminar somewhere, and this is the first time I'm seeing all of you, and there's $50 in an envelope because a student gave it to me to bring to the office. I'm not going to give it to somebody I don't know. Not because they're not trustworthy. The circumstances are they are a stranger to me. Okay, so that matters. All right. Let's say that let's go back to a couple that's engaged in a sexual act. They're not married. They're not married to each other, but they are married. The act is adultery. But one wants to give themselves to the other person. One is expressing their love. They come from the circumstances are that their marriage is really empty of love. There's not a lot of emotion. She gets no fulfillment from her husband. He doesn't even really care about what interest in her. This guy does. This guy satisfies her in levels that her husband never does emotionally, physically. All right? Those are all good circumstances. But it doesn't change anything, right? We could even say that let's flip it around. I know this. I don't want to sound provocative, but you know what a shock jocks are. Those guys on the radio that do stupid stuff to try to get people to watch their shows. Well, there was a shock jock up in New York about a decade or so ago that talked a couple that they might have been married for all I know to have sexual relations in the vestibule of St. Patrick's Cathedral because they thought, you know, that would bring publicity to their radio show. Okay, so if they were married to each other, and I'm just making up the circumstance, if they are married to each other and they're engaged in a sexual act, that's conjugal love. It's perfectly fine, right? And if they want to give themselves to each other in love, that's a very good intention. But the where doesn't work out so well, okay? So that alone would not be good, okay? So we're going to work through these, but do you get the difference between an object and intention and a circumstance, all right? Okay. The more we do these, the better you'll get off. Yeah. Now, in order for the moral act to be licit, oh, and by the way, I use the word good to mean licit. I use the word licit to mean good, and I use the word illicit to mean bad. So I'm putting this up on a note this year because in the past, I always say good and bad, but when I write, I always think terms licit and illicit, and students ask me which is which, all right? In order for the moral act to be licit, all three fonts must be good. All three. If any one of them is bad, then they're all bad. Then the act is bad, okay? So if I just put the ruler down on Ryan's desk to get her attention, to alert her because I want to be funny, and the circumstances are I'm her teacher and she's a student, doesn't matter if it's corny or not, it's a good act, all right? There's nothing evil happening there. It's licit, even if it's corny. It's licit. If Anthony takes the envelope off my desk and brings it down to the office on his way to using the bathroom because he's a nice guy, totally licit, all right? Totally licit. If a couple who's having intercourse with each other, and their intent is to give themselves to each other, but it's in a public place, illicit. All three have to be good. The fact that the circumstances there didn't warrant, then the entire act is not good. So this is why, and I don't know if perhaps some priest in your confessions might ask a few questions. They're not trying to pry, right? But if a person does go in there and say, you know, I'm sorry I cheated, what did you cheat on? Well, that quiz in school, okay. That's one thing, you know. Well, what did you cheat on? My SATs. It's a little more serious. Why? Well, because your grade, your SAT score is going to, you know, be determining on getting into college, and somebody might not get into school because of your score that you cheated to get. You know, if you are a stockbroker and you cheated, that's criminal. Okay, so I mean it matters, all right? So what a priest is usually doing in that conversation is trying to find out how the gravity, how serious are we talking about this, right? Okay. This is the statement you should remember. The morality of the act is determined primarily by the object. The first and foremost, it's the object. The morality of an act is determined primarily by an object. If you go to Veritatis Splendor, which is John Paul II's encyclical on the splendor of truth, it's his moral encyclical, he will say the object of an act is determined primarily by the object rationally chosen. Right? But I've already taught you that we need to choose things consciously, rationally, and with deliberation. The object is the primary thing. You look at that first and foremost, above your intention. So when people say, but I meant well, you might have, but that's not the point. What you did was wrong, okay? So that's why you hear things like that. What do you need?
What is it by?
By the object. By the object. Now, one last thing before I show you a scenario. Intrinsic evils. Intrinsic means there's something within it, okay? An intrinsic evil is both contrary to natural and eternal law. This is evil always and everywhere. This is evil always and everywhere. In other words, there is no circumstance or intention that can change these acts. They're evil always and everywhere. So what I'm going to do is give you, now we're going to list what are some intrinsic evils. The first one is murder and all its related evils. Now murder's different than killing, okay? So murder, that would include abortion, euthanasia, embryonic stem cell destruction or research. If the object is murder or abortion, the act's already evil. You don't even need to evaluate it. It's an intrinsic evil, okay? So what that means is, under no circumstances, under no intention, can murdering somebody be good, ever. Under no circumstances, under no intention, can abortion be good, ever. Now, before you start thinking about what about the life of the mother, this or that, we'll handle all that, all right? It's probably not what you think. We'll get to that. This, by the way, will be the last introductory material to this. After this, we're going to start talking about life issues. Yes?
What is it related to evil?
Well, it's related to evils, then I gave some examples. Okay, so that's all I mean by that. So some of the examples would be abortion, euthanasia, embryonic stem cell research. So that'd be euthanasia, whether it was passive, or active, or whether it was voluntary or involuntary. Doesn't matter.
I saw this thing about the homunculus experiment.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Homunculus experiment?
I couldn't hear you. Louder.
Homunculus experiment. I saw that on YouTube. Is that the same thing?
Monkey? Did you say monkey?
Homunculus.
Homunculus.
Monkeyless?
Homunculus, yeah.
I don't know anything about that, sorry. Under no circumstances, regardless of the intention, racism is an intrinsic evil. There's never justification for it. There's never justification for slavery and all its related dehumanizing evils. What else could we include in this? Bigotry, narcissism, all right? Now, when we start talking about abortion, I'll use analogies. You know, somebody might say, well, we don't want to make abortion illegal, but we want to make it rare and unnecessary. So we need to have a better health care, so it's unnecessary. That sounds compelling, right? But what if we were to say that in the 1840s? Rather than outlawing slavery, let's invent a way that we can mechanize cotton picking so we won't need as many slaves. I wouldn't buy that. No, because we're talking about an intrinsic evil. I don't want to lessen it. It's an evil. I need to eradicate it, all right? That type of thing. Torture. Wars of aggression and all its related evils. Under no circumstance, with no intention, can torture be illicit, all right? And that would include physical and emotional torture, mental torture. Somebody might say, now we don't do, and maybe you don't like the fact we don't do it, we will not do those thought experiments. Well, what happens if somebody has the code for a bomb and it's going to go off and kill 1 million people? Would you torture them there? Okay. The reason why we don't do it is because there's nothing in reality about those experiments, okay? If you study anything around the issue of torture, you will realize not only is it ineffective, but you can't presume that the person absolutely knows what you know, what you want, or that the information they have is of a quality that will be what you want. So it might be, you know, a nice James Bond scenario to think this guy has the information, right? But has anybody seen the movie Taken? Okay, you know when he has the guy down in the basement, he has him hooked up to the light switch, okay? It doesn't matter, he left it on forever, he's not going to get the information he wanted. He got something, but...
I looked up the definition.
What
It's,
is-
the word refers to little man with great powers, and it's when they inseminate an egg, and then incubate it, and then that egg somehow makes a creature.
Yeah, you have to show me that. I'm not familiar with that. But either way, okay? Adultery, fornication. Do you guys know what fornication is? The last period did not.
It's when two married couples have intercourse with each
No, that's adultery.
It's when you have premarital.
It's, yeah, unmarried. It's premarital sex. Okay? Adultery, fornication, homosexual acts, contraception, under no circumstance, all right, with no intention. And the reason why you need to know the intentions are important is because if a woman really was in a loveless relationship and she's been there for 15 years and the person and the man doesn't even recognize her existence, who would not think this woman needs love, right? So we're not taking that away from her. So we're saying we understand your intention, but adultery remains to be an object of evil, okay? The last thing, and we're not going to define what these are. So it's injustice to people. I'm giving you some examples. Injustice to a wage earner, all right? If a company is taking excess profits and they're charging, or they're paying the people, pitlins, that's intrinsically evil. We don't have to worry about the circumstance. What the circumstance? The guy likes a lot of money, you know? Widows, because of their vulnerability, or foreigners. So, the Catholic Church, and if you guys want to pick immigration as something we talk about, we can do that. But at least let's know this: no matter how a person arrives here, you can never dehumanize them. Doesn't matter, right? I mean, you could hold them accountable, fine, but nothing can be dehumanizing. So there's under no circumstance, with no intentions, can that happen.
So widows and foreigners are evil?
They're not evil. You can't do an injustice to these.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no. Okay. Now, there's nothing to write down on this last slide, but I want you to pay attention. Okay? I'm going to have this identical slide. And all the other competing ethical systems, we're going to do the same thing. And I'm going to show you what happens when you use deontology, what happens when you use situational ethics, what happens when you use consequentialism. We're going to look at this now just through the lens of the three fonts. All right, so that you get, this is like a, I'm giving you like a more detailed example. We're going to stick to the details and circumstances that are here. So Gloria, there's two people, Gloria and Jessie. Gloria's hands are sweating. She's 15 minutes into her math final when she began to panic. The exam that she's taking is worth 50% of her grade. She understood math. She even liked it. And usually she does pretty well. Her problem is she's not a strong test taker. You relate to that, right? Her grades never reflect her understanding of the material that she studied. Now here she is once again stuck in a problem, and this problem is worth a quarter of the test grade. She's drawing an absolute blank. She puts her head down on the desk. She concentrates as hard as she can. She actually remembered doing a similar problem in class, and she even explained it to her friend Jessie, who doesn't get things so easily. But now here she is stressed out by the test. She can't even remember how to begin. She lifts her head. She stares at the test. She's looking at the clock on the wall. All she can think is if she fails this, she'll fail the course. What will her parents think? She's the first generation college student in her family. They're all hoping on her. Doing well is showing how appreciative she is for the love and support her parents have given her. Jesse's sitting right in front of her. He's a really good test taker. And Gloria could see that he's already solved the problem. The teacher has his back turned. He's on the other side of the room. Gloria could just look over Jesse's shoulder. Who would know? All she needs is the answer. She'll figure out all the work once she knows what the answer is. She needed to think quickly. She thought how unfair it is that she regularly does not do well, even though she works so hard in class, and she really understands the material typically. She thought about how often she even helped Jessie in class throughout the semester. Now what should she do? She prided herself on doing what's right, but how right is it that she has to work in a system that doesn't reward such hard work and punishes her for a weakness of her not being a good test taker? That's not fair. Finally, she took a deep breath. She looked to see if the teacher was still on the other side of the room. She glanced over Jessie's shoulder just long enough to get the final answer to the question. Her method and answer then she worked out was correct. Okay. The object's easy here. What was the object? What is the what that she did? She did cheat. Okay? Now, let's be a little more careful here. Why did she cheat? What was her intention?
She was appreciative of her parents trying to help her.
Yes. Yes, she wanted a good grade, but that really wasn't what she was after, was it? She was really thinking about, I'm the first generation college student. I want to do right by my parents. Is that a good intention? It's a wonderful intention. It's wonderful. What are the circumstances involved? Well, they're both in the same class. Jesse's not that great, at grasping the material, but he's one of those people that just has luck taking tests. Gloria is the opposite. She's not a good test taker. She understands it. Give her unlimited time and she'll come up with it, but otherwise she doesn't do well. So the reality is then, so all the circumstances that they're, freshmen in college or whatever, they're both taking classes, all of those things. So when we look at the circumstances, they're all fine. Her intention's noble. But we primarily determine the morality of an act by the object. It was cheating. Okay? So this then is defined as not a moral act. So we get the intentions, right? So I'm trying to explain to you what I want you to get from this is that what a person feels means a lot. Like if she just wanted to get a good grade just because she didn't study, that's a lousy intention, all right? So we would say we get your plight. You're not a good test taker. That's one of the circumstances, right? So what I'm going to do with you in the future is I'll give you something like this and I will tell you, identify the object, identify the intention, and then identify some various circumstances surrounding it. So you get that they're all involved in determining the moral act. Any questions? All right, that's it.